do know this is being recorded. So again, my name is Dr. Lori Ann Stretch, and I'm very excited to be here to talk about something that I really wish I had had when I started doing research, because it would have been a really helpful tool, and that is the journal article reporting standards. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what they are and also how you might use them, both as a student, as a researcher, and as a faculty member. So I'm going to be bringing hopefully that together, and this is the first of a series of 5 seminars that we're going to be doing on JARS. So I encourage you to come to the other ones. We're doing one a month. Next month, Dr. Bonfini will be doing qual. And then the next month, Dr. Chambers is going to be doing quant, and that'll take us through the fall. And then we'll do the others in the spring. All right, so let me share my screen, and I just want to show you where you can find JARS to start. And then we're also going to watch just a really quick video that APA has about JARS. So, all right, everybody see that APA style site? Okay. All right, so we're going to start here. This is APA Style. I hope everybody's familiar with APA Style, apastyle.org, and it is a wonderful, wonderful page if you haven't explored it. But this is particularly about the journal article reporting standards. Here you can see they have links to all of the particular JARS. This is JARS Quantitative, JARS Qual, JARS Mixed, and JARS Race, Ethnicity, and Culture. Now, these are the 4 main JARS. There are also supplemental JARS, which deal with very specific types of research designs. And when we move to the more specific JARS seminars, we're going to be talking about how you might use those supplements and what those components are. The purpose of this particular one is just to give an overview of JARS. What is it, how we might use it, and why we might use it. All right, so we're going to scroll down. They have lots of great information here, infographic, a good podcast, and then we have this video, which is the one we're going to watch.
Scientific advancement depends on clear communication. As research grows more complex, the need to report findings in a way that can be easily understood by many has become paramount. Since 1929, the American Psychological Association has published guidelines to improve the quality of scientific writing. However, the field of psychology has grown significantly in recent years, and with it has come a need for research reporting standards that can be applied to a wide range of studies. The APA has now created 2 comprehensive resources, collectively called APA-Style Journal Article Reporting Standards, or APA-Style JARS, to help authors report their research with clarity, thoroughness, and transparency. The revised and updated standards expand the scope and depth of the original JARS published in American Psychologist in 2008. These standards are a tool for editors and reviewers to recommend to authors whose work requires additional explanation, as well as a tool for authors determining what is essential to report in scholarly research. APA-style JARS serves as a resource for editors to communicate ways reviewers and authors can improve the quality of research in their journals and facilitate the peer review process. An important update to APA-style JARS is the establishment of reporting standards for qualitative research, qualitative meta-analysis, and mixed methods research. Despite the recent surge in published research rooted in qualitative methods, rigorous standards for reporting such studies have been lacking in psychology until now. To address this, the APA Publication and Communications Board commissioned a task force to examine the numerous inquiry traditions, methods, and goals of the field. The result is a framework describing the materials that should be included in qualitative research reports, with guidance for its application. This guidance can assist authors, reviewers, or editors who are less familiar with the distinctive practices used reporting qualitative research studies. The APA has also revised and expanded their quantitative reporting standards. One goal of the updates is to help authors present their work in a way that allows readers to understand the studies being reported at a sufficient level of detail to accurately interpret the results and, where desired, to plan and conduct a replication of the study. To improve the tracking of a priori and post hoc findings, it's now recommended that hypotheses, analyses, and conclusions be divided into primary, secondary, and exploratory groupings. New modules for reporting specific types of studies, such as clinical trials and observational studies, have also been established. Papers that adhere to these standards will provide the information needed for a researcher to replicate a reported study. A major aim of both the quantitative and qualitative versions of APA-style JARs is to broaden the reach of published research from the level of the student to that of the peer reviewer. The standards provide guidance for the editor or reviewer to provide an appropriate evaluation, and for any reader, such as a student, policymaker, or member of the public, to better understand the story. By cultivating common terminology and facilitating comparisons, evaluations, and applications of research, the updated APA-style JARs aim to build a shared language that promotes easier comprehension of research, improves the quality of published work, and advances the field of psychology to benefit society and improve people's lives.
Okay. That was a brief overview. I also want to point out that there are these two wonderful books that you can purchase that don't cost that much, and I love them. They're like my two new most favorite reference resources, and they're cited here. This is the qualitative one and the quantitative one, especially for those of us as faculty members. I found this to be really helpful when a student is struggling with a particular aspect of a paper or a section of their dissertation. I reference these and bring these out. We're going to actually be adding these to our dissertation classes. So they're going to become part of the required materials for the dissertation classes. So just wanted to highlight that source as well. I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to go over to the PowerPoint. And you'll see Dr. Mulvaney's name on it because she actually helped create this. So I wanted to make sure she still got credit for that. All right, so here we go. So these are our learning objectives. We're going to talk about the four main JARS quants. We're going to talk about what they are, what are the guidelines, why do we need them, all of that. And then this was the video link. I can put the link to the PowerPoint in the chat in a little bit so that we can have that for all of you so that you'll have these links. And then there's also the podcast, but all of it is on that page that I shared as well. So JARS started actually in 2008 with the development of the committee. That is where the whole process began, but they actually weren't published until 2018. And then there's been different versions that have been published since, and they've released the quant, then they released the qual, the mixed, and then most recently in 2023, the race, ethic, ethnicity, and culture one. And then these really reflect APA's commitment to continuously improving research. This is also impacting the counseling field because our journals are in the process of adapting JARS as their reporting standards as well. So JCD, AMCD's journal, some of them have already begun to adopt this as the standard, and you'll note that feedback is coming back using JARS as part of their evaluation tool. So this is something that we're looking to see most of the journals in the counseling field should be adjusting to in the near future. So let's talk about the components of JARS. Again, we have the three main ones are your JARS quant, your JARS qual, and then mixed methods. The mixed methods one really focuses on how quant and like a mixed methods is not just quant plus qual. It is really this integration of the process and how do you have that data integration and really tap into the power of mixed methodology. It really is striving, all the JARS are striving for research, methodology, rigor, and transparency, as well as clarity in the process. Those of us that have been in the field for a while know that things go by many different names. And like you might have a section that somebody knows as procedure, somebody else is listing as methodology, but not really distinguishing those because actually they really do a little bit slightly different things. One is part of the other one. And how do we know this and which words are being used correctly? And JARS really helps clarify that. It says, this is what your section should be called. Here's what should be in that section. I have students a lot of times ask me, where should I be putting this? Where should I be putting this? Where do these things go? And JARS makes it very simple. It tells you, put this here, put this here. And if you're using this design, you also need to include these pieces. So it really is very much like a checklist of making sure that you've included everything and that you're using consistent language and logical flow of your process so that everybody knows what to expect when they're reading it. I should be able to find your hypothesis, your research questions, your purpose statement within the first few paragraphs of your article. I shouldn't have to go all the way through the article to figure out what you were studying, right? So it's going to really give a clear sequence to when and how things should be presented. And I think that has been really helpful for me, both as a reviewer, as a professor. It's really helped in the consistency of what to expect. I will also say that it is helping start to enhance the quality of publications. I think that some of the students in my classes in 734 and 738, they are asked to use JARS to critique articles that have already been published. And I think it's been very shocking to students to see something that on the face value looks really good, but once they start applying the JARS standards to it, they're like, how did this get published? And that's a really good question. How did it get published? And so it's really going to enhance the quality of what we're putting out there. There's a lot of great resources on APA style too. There's tables, there are charts, there's checklists. And then I've developed some other resources, and I know other faculty have too, to help continue enhancing how we're using that. And I'm going to share some of those with you today. So again, transparency, enhancing replication. If you don't give enough information in your article, which as Patty and some of them who were converting their dissertation know, it's really hard to put an article in that small of a space. How do you give a very concise, succinct, comprehensive description of what you did so that somebody else can replicate it if they want, ideally without even having to ask you any questions? That's the goal, but often they have to reach out to you for more information. And again, like I said, improving the quality. Also, I think for me as a quantitative researcher, it's been really helpful to see more data being published so that I can truly analyze the results of a study. We now have calculators and tools that will actually help us evaluate whether or not the quantitative results were even possible. So there's some really interesting things where you'll see that people honestly have made mistakes and people have misrepresented data. And so now with these requirements, they have to report the information necessary for there to be integrity checks on the data. And so that has also been a benefit of JARS as well. So improved reporting practices, the glossary, which I'm going to show you the glossary, especially if you are in the process of publishing your dissertation or writing a dissertation in the near future, it'll be really important to reference the glossary because we're really trying to standardize language so that when I say one thing, that's what everybody means, right? So when I say cohort study, this is what that means. When I say I'm doing a direct replication, this is what it means, right? So it's making it very consistent. Increased accountability, like I said, being able to check the results and the overall quality of the research. So again, 4 main areas: quant, qual, mixed methods, and REC. And we're looking for transparency. So how do we do that? So in quant, there is the sample selection. How did you get your participants? Who is your population? Who are the participants? What were your sampling strategies? All of these are the types of things that you would want to answer in that section. Data collection. What were the measures? What were the instruments? Another thing that I like about this is it stresses the importance of being consistent in your order. So if I present my purpose statement, I should have ideally my direct or my dependent variable first, followed by independent variables. So when I present my instruments, I should also report in that same format, right? So my dependent variable should be first, followed by the next independent variable, followed by the next independent variable, followed throughout my paper. Whenever I'm talking about my variables, they should be presented in the same order over and over. And it's that type of consistency that helps somebody who's not familiar with your research track your research and make sure that they're understanding the process. They're not having to sit there and go, was that instrument for this variable or for this variable? They're able to determine, because if you're consistent with your order, it'll make sense to them, right? It's going to flow. And so that's important. as well as the psychometric properties. And how do you report those, right? Like validity and reliability are tied to the populations in which they were conducted. They are not tied to the instrument in which they are attached to. And a lot of people confuse that. They say, this is the validity of this. No, this was the validity of that instrument with this population. And you're missing that little piece of information, right? So it's how you're going to report these things. Data analysis. A lot of people don't think about this, but it is important to say what tools you used. Like JASP, if you're using JASP, which is an amazing statistically free open source statistical program, you need to cite it, right? You need to give credit to the team at the University of Amsterdam and others who've been working on this for years. They need to get their due credit. G-power, that's how you calculated your sample size. You need to give credit to the team that did that, right? So you need to cite and reference those tools. You need to talk about what did you do? The one thing that I see missing from a lot of statistical analyses is the assumptions. How do you know that you could test that statistical analysis? You know, when I see certain types of numbers used, followed by certain types of statistical analyses that can't at all run that type of number, you know, I have to question, did these authors actually run the assumptions? Because if they had run the assumptions, usually one of the first is your independent variables have to be scaled. And then you're running something that's not for the types of numbers you have. That makes me question, did you do your due process? Did you do the whole process to ensure that that statistical analysis could be used for the types of numbers that you're running your analysis on? And then the results. And this is something that I know I saw a lot in my younger years was they would report significance and walk away, right? Significance is not the whole story. Significance, p-value, tells me that there's a mathematically significant result. It doesn't tell me if I should care about it. Effect size tells me if I should care about it, right? And so now with JARS quant, it says, okay, you have to report that effect size too. What does it mean? What is the meaningfulness of this result in comparison to other things, right? JARS qual, what's the research context, right? What is the context of this? What is the data collection methods? How does the researcher's role play into that? Who are you in relation to the data? How might that skew? How might that bias you, right? What are you bringing to the table and what lenses are you looking at this data through? How are you analyzing your data? I can say for sure, Dr. Bonfini and I see, what is it? Generic qualitative study. One more time, I'm going to cry.
Generic,
Yeah.
or just phenomenology
Or
without.
just phenomenal. Yeah, it needs to match. We want to see alignment, right? So if you say you're doing transcendental phenomenology, it should see that all the way through, right? If you're going to do a narrative case study, then I want to see that all the way through from, you know, what you're saying you're going to do, how you do it, what you do at the end. I need to see that alignment all the way through. And I think that JARS Qual does help with that because again, there are these supplemental tools. So you have your general qual, and then you're going to say, okay, what type of design am I using? And you're going to use a supplement. And what's going to happen is if you're misaligned, when you get to that supplement, you're going to be like, but I don't have that part. And we're going to be like, yeah, you don't have that part because you're out of alignment because that's a required component of that particular design. And so that's super helpful to make sure you're getting everything in there and you're using the language of the design. I see a lot of people use themes and codes as if they're interchangeable, and they're not. They are very different tools in qualitative research. And so making sure you're using the language of the design, this will help with that as well. And then how do you present your findings and still respect your clients or your participants' confidentiality, right? How are you not giving so much information that you're risking revealing who this is? Because a lot of our qualitative studies, very small populations, very narrow parameters for that. And you could, you know, potentially risk identifying who your participants are. Okay. And then for mixed methods, How are you doing mixed methods? Again, mixed methods is not just quant plus qual. John Creswell would roll over and just like freak out if he saw you doing that, right? It is a combination. It is an integration of those designs. So it has an exponential effect. It's not 1 + 1. It's very exponential in the sense that you're going to get a much more robust and rich description of a phenomenon and much more insight if mixed methods is done correctly. And this will help you do that correctly. And it kind of forces you to choose what type of mixed methods you're going to do. How are you going to embed? How are you going to run these concurrent? What are you doing and how are you going to do it? And how are you going to interpret it? All the jars deal with ethical considerations. And I'll just say this, many of you have heard me say this so many times. I'm sure you're tired of me saying this, and that is that it is not an ethical consideration unless it is tied to an ethical standard. And saying ACA Code 2014 is not tying it to an ethical standard. That is cheating, okay? That's not doing it. You have to actually specify, and it's not enough to say my research requires informed consent. What does that tell me? It doesn't tell me anything, right? What type of informed consent? Like, what is it about your participants? What are they consenting to, right? What are the risks? What are the costs? What are the benefits of them participating in your research? What are the potential outcomes for them, both positive and negative? And how are you dealing with that ethically, right? What are you doing to help and protect them as best you can? So when you're talking about ethical considerations, don't go for the easy route, which will not get you any points in my class, which is just saying, here's an ethical consideration. I need to understand how that ethical consideration applies to your study. And that's what JARS is saying to do, right? Like, how is it applicable to your study? What are the concerns in your study? Same thing for the limitations. You can go through 100 dissertations and pull out a wonderful list of limitations. But if you can't tie it to your own research, that's not helpful, right? Like, if you're worried about our participants answering honestly, why? Like, what is it about your research that might make it hard for people to be honest? And how are you trying to deal with that? What are you doing? What are you creating for them, say in a qualitative, interview to create safety? What type of work up to those harder questions are you doing? How are you addressing those limitations as best as you can? And data sharing, outline where and how you're going to share the data. Did the participants have a chance in a qualitative study to do member checking, right? Was there some sort of peer review? Like, what happened with this data? Is it just sitting on a shelf or in a box? Like, mine's still up there even. I'm terrified to throw anything away from my dissertation. And I did my dissertation, I think, longer ago than anybody on this call. And so I'm just saying that it's really hard to get rid of that box when you finish it. Of course, y'all probably don't even have boxes anymore. You probably just have electronic boxes.
No, I have boxes and I also have everything scanned.
I have
So
2,
its
3
own drive
reminders.
that is
Mhm.
in
Yep.
the fireproof
I have
safe.
a hard
Yeah.
drive, a backup hard drive.
In case.
Yes, Christian, we might need some counseling about this, but just cannot let go of it.
Look, I lost everything in Katrina, so more power
Oh,
to
that might
y'all.
be the way
I
to go. I
understand.
don't
I
know.
understand why y'all do that. I'm surprised you don't have a ninja garden it. So for sure, please retain your stuff because you never know what'll happen.
Exactly. Mine's on the top shelf of the second floor closet. Okay, just saying. All right, there we go. Okay, so yes, so how are you sharing this information? I was super excited when this one came out, race, ethnicity, and culture, because this was an area where I saw a lot of gaps, right, in the literature. Like, it drove me crazy, it still does, as a quantitative researcher to see, okay, I had a sample of 300, and this was significant for 10% of this sample. Okay, who of the sample was this significant for? Right? Because let's say I have a sample and 90% of my sample is identifies as, cisgender, Caucasian, heterosexuals, then there's a chance that the rest of my population did not benefit from this. But if you don't tell me that, then I could potentially do harm to a population applying something to that population that doesn't work for them. And this is where journal bias comes in, where a lot of journals, and I'm hoping it's changing, we keep talking about it, really only want to publish significant results, right? And we have to really advocate that non-significant results are just as important as significant results, because we need to know for whom things are not working as well as for whom things are working. Because usually in most studies, there's more not working than there is working. That's normal. That's a part of the process. So we need to understand the whole thing. So the more we can report on who is benefiting and be specific about that, the more ethical and appropriate we can be in our interventions and the way that we're responding to the research that's happening. So this has been an amazing tool that really guides you on what information you need to include and what sections and where you need to include it. And this is going to be the session that we do after Dr. Chambers. So Dr. Chambers is in October. So I'll have to play around with it. We haven't scheduled this one. I'm thinking this one's going to be in January because we have the UC conference in November. So we'll probably do the REC one in January. But we shouldn't wait to check it out because it's a really good tool to help with that. So how can you enhance your research? Use the standards. Use the standards. They're here. They're wonderful. Get these books. I love them. If you're going to become a faculty member, get both of them because they're really helpful. Because guess what? You're going to be working with students that are doing both, even if you only did one in your study. So it's important to know. We're going to try to improve transparency, replicability, trust, which our field has lost a little bit of in some areas. So it's really important that we build up trust, especially when it comes to culture and ethnicity and race. We have a lot of work to do in that area to be more transparent and clear and trustworthy. Consistency in how we report our outcomes, and we can compare research, right? I think that's something that is really exciting about this process is now I can put some articles beside each other and I can really start to compare effect size. I can probably do a better job with meta-analyses now because I have the data that I need to be able to do that. So this is a really exciting move in our field. All right, so let's talk about some sample resources. I'm going to just go through these slides so I can tell you what we're going to talk about, and then I'm going to show you some cool tools. So these are some tools that I've developed and a couple of my students have developed. So the first one is just for overview. I'm just going to show you this example overview. Like I said, Dr. Chambers is going to do the quant one, but we've developed a checklist to help students create research proposals, to check off things to see if they're including everything they need to be able to do that type of research. Then we've also created an evaluation tool. I have to give a lot of credit to Robert Burdine. He created a really wonderful tool that I'll share with you. And then I'm going to show you kind of what the qual, what they look like in the actual page. So I'm going to stop sharing and share that other page again. I'll take a breath and see if there's any questions at this point.
So I'm going to make a comment. It looks like our library now has the reporting standards.
Hey, awesome.
So I just grabbed the permalinks to them. So I'm going to throw them in the chat.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
We can now have them for free / tuition prices.
Yes, for free / tuition. And here, I'm going to grab the share file for this PowerPoint for you guys real quick. Oh, this one. They reordered the things in SharePoint. It's totally messed me up. Anyone used to be at the bottom, now it's at the top, and I'm like so confused. So, all right. So here we go. I am putting, this is the link. Hopefully it works and it shares kindly to you to the PowerPoint. So that was just dropped in there. All right, so we can see the screen, right? Here we go. So let's go on our tour. Let's start with JARS Quant. My favorite. All right, so not that I'm biased or anything. So JARS Quant started in 2018, and it looks at these main forms of quantitative research. Here are the actual standards, so we're going to pop into that one. I'm going to make this a little bigger. Okay, so you can see it's giving me a description of what goes in that section. So title tells me what I need to put in my author note, tells me about my abstracts. Little tip for you guys, abstract and an introduction are different. I see people use these interchangeably, and please don't do that. So an abstract is the thing that you're seeing when you go to a database. You know, when you look at the database, you see that little description of the article. That's what an abstract is. It shouldn't have any references in it because it doesn't have a reference list when it's in a database. It is a description of what your paper says or does. All right. The introduction is, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? And what are you planning on doing? Okay, that's the introduction. And this tells you exactly what you need to have in this. Now, you might say, well, Dr. LA, this is about public research that's already been done. In my classes, I'm writing about, except for a few of you, I'm writing about things that I'm planning to do. Just change the tense, right? So use this as a guide for what you will do. Okay, it's a really good guide for your proposals, especially for chapters 3, where it's going to help you know exactly what to put in there. And all you're doing is changing it to the future tense. I will be doing this. I want to do this. Here's what I'm planning on doing and why I'm planning on doing it. All right, and it tells you, you know, this is the introduction. So it gives you an outline basically of what your introduction should be, what your method should be. It tells you sampling procedure, sample size, power, precision, the measures, the data collection, the quality, the instrumentation. I mean, it is going through the whole 9 yards. All right. Now, here's the cool part. In the conditions, it says, okay, if you're doing an experiment, you also need to use table 2 in module A. If you're doing a clinical trial with randomization, you also need to use, so this is kind of like one of those choose your adventure books that some of us had as kids, right? You get to choose your adventure and decide where you're going with this. All right, and then it tells you here's your data diagnostics that you need to give, your analytical strategy, and then here's my results. All right, what information? And this gives you a quant participant pool. I love this. You can actually use this as a figure in your research articles, Patty. So you can create this wonderful chart of where was the attrition? Who did you keep in your study? Why did you get rid of the people you did? And here's a beautiful picture of it, right? Like you can just take a snapshot of this flow chart and show what happened to your sample. Okay, you started with this sample and you ended up with this sample, right? What happened? And it gives you an, you know, tells you exactly what happened. It's very cool. I've seen this in a few articles recently and it's really nice. It makes the thing click and it helps people see the design and what was happening. Let's look at non-random assignment because a lot of you will use that in yours. So this tells you, okay, here are the things you need to report for non-random assignment. Special designs, special analytics, Bayesian statistics is picking up. It's something that you can do in JASP. It's basically, so most of you are familiar with inferential statistics and with parametric statistics. Parametric statistics are based on the theory of probability, whereas Bayesian statistics are based off frequentist theory. So it's a completely different way of doing statistics. I do it for fun, but you know, I'm kind of weird like that. So here we go. All right, and then we also have the qualitative designs. You can see I can just jump right over there to them and I can see here's the qualitative reporting standards. I'm not going to go into detail. Dr. Bonfini is going to guide you through these in great detail, but you can see lots of good information here. And then you have your mixed, and I'm going to pull up race and ethnicity here and just show you some of what that would look like. Okay, so it's telling you, okay, in each of these sections, here's your opportunity to do this, right? To include race, ethnicity, and culture. And this is how you would do that. So really good guidance on that process. They also give you some definitions. You can click on these and get definitions. Here's the inclusive language guide. They've done a really good job of integrating all the tools. So you don't have to go find things. They're all linked really well in there. The other thing I wanted to show is this, which I am a big fan of right now, the APA style JAR supplemental glossary. And so this gives us a common tool for language. If you're not familiar with APA, Dictionary of Psychology. It's a wonderful tool to use. So you literally just type into Google APA Dictionary of Psychology, and you can look up any psychology-based word. And I encourage students to use this when they're operationalizing their terms for their dissertations, but this is a great tool for making sure that we're all speaking the same language when it comes to research. If you haven't already, Dr. Manfini, I think this would be a great addition to the research class.
I think so too.
Yeah, at the master's level, this would be a great resource. Okay.
We actually do have this as like a link in there, but I think just to make it more explicit in that class, and even with some of our dissertation students too, when they're writing up their proposals.
Yep. You guys have links to this in the PowerPoint, but this is an example of an overview of JARS Quant that I did for my 2 stats classes. And it again just goes through what each section is, but what I really like is, and here's all the links to the main things, is this. So what we did is went back through and we took each section and we wrote questions, because some people just think better that way, right? Like, okay, my title, here's some questions I need to answer. Here's some questions I need to answer. And again, this is just for the general quant. It's not for the specific ones. We'll get there, not there yet, but this will give you some guidance for this. And recently I just created, and Dr. Valentini just looked at that, a chapter 3 checklist guide for people. And we're going to put those in the dissertation classes so that they'll have that. And it's based off JARS and a new text that just came out that if you don't have, I also recommend, which is by Philip Adu, a dear friend of mine. I think Christian might know Philip too. He's at Walden. And Philip wrote this dissertation, one of the best I've ever seen. Love this book. Again, it's going in all of our dissertation classes. Really good outline for how to do it.
It's so good that I had a student finally click on it and read it. She's like, why didn't I read this the first dissertation sequence class? I could have saved myself so much
A
time.
lot of trouble. Yes, exactly. A lot of trouble. So again, the new chapter 3 guide is a combination of the JARS and Dr. Adu's book and a few other resources. So it's a really good guide. And we're going to create those for chapter 1 and chapter 2 as well. All right, so that is one of the things. And then I want to share what Robert designed, which is a great evaluation. I'm sure all of you have been asked to critique articles, or when you're doing literature review, like how do you critique articles in this way? And so I have students now in the 734 and 738 class, they have to do a deep dive critique of articles. And this is an example of a tool that some of the students, Robert specifically, has designed. So they put the reference here, and then they literally go through JARS. How does it align? How does it not align? And it has been a really helpful tool, with most people ending up with, how did this get published? But just saying, there are some good articles out there. But this really helps you go through this process of really breaking down, right? Did this article, does it make sense? Because I think a lot of people take stuff at face value. Oh, it was published, so it's got to be good. It's not always the case. Okay. Not always the case. All right. Some of you know this about me. I love Kahoot. So if you have a Kahoot app, open up your Kahoot apps, because I am going to let you do a Kahoot. So it's an app on your phone, Kahoot. You can download it if you want to play. Some of you already have it because you've already suffered Kahoots with me. Oh, sorry. Had fun with Kahoots with me. So, all right. So we're going to do a Kahoot and just see what you've learned today. Okay. So Kahoot, for those of you who don't know, Kahoot apostrophe. It's a really fun tool to help review materials with your students. Why do I like it? I like to talk about my pedagogy here. I like it because then I can see where people have missed information, right? So it's not just a competition to see who's got it all, but it's really a good tool for me to do formative evaluation as I'm teaching, so that I know, hey, what else do they need? What more do they need? Or what do I need to not say again? Because they already got it. All right, so here we're going to go. See who's going to play with me today. So the pin, when you get there, is 848-5130. Or now they have these wonderful little QR codes you can just scan. And you can make up names. You don't have to be your real name. You can be whoever you want to be in my class. I love the little monsters and the brains. And then Halloween, they always have Halloween stuff, and Christmas and holidays, they have other stuff. It's fun. All right. So if you're not able to join us, Kahoot, you can play along on your head. But I'm going to go ahead and start. The pen will stay at the bottom or top, so you can join if you want to. We're just playing to have fun. All right, here we go. So first one is just a poll. Have you conducted research yet? So you have a choice. Red, triangle for yes, blue, no, not yet, I plan to. Boom, yes, good. All right, almost everybody has. And welcome to the researching world, the one that plans to. What does JAR stand for? We've been talking about it for almost an hour. What does it stand for? Yes, good job. Journal Article Reporting Standards. All right. J is in the lead. Which year was JARS initiated? Initiated. Oh, we have a split. It was 2008. 2008. So the first one came out in 2018, but 2008 is when it actually was initiated. Ooh, FH is taking the lead. True or false? JARS REC was added in 2023. And the answer is true. It was the most recently released JARS. J is back in the lead. What is the focus of JARS qual? Very good. Yes, qualitative. That one's kind of a give me. DR is in the lead. True or false? JARS promotes transparency. True. DR is holding on to the lead. Which JARS category includes psychometric properties? This one's kind of a trick question. Which one focuses mostly on it? Because I just thought about it, mix would have to have that too, but for the most part, quant has it, yes. Okay. J's in the lead, followed by DR and R. True or false? JARS quant involves narrative construction. That would be false because narrative construction is a qualitative focus, right? So that would be false. Ooh, FH is moving up. All right, what is a key component of JARS mixed? Try to give y'all a visual of that. Yes, integration. It's the integration of data. Okay, JDR and FH, all the doctors are in the lead. JARS enhances research quality. Yes, good job. All right. Which JARS category focuses on race and culture? Good job. REC, race, ethnicity, and culture. True or false? JARS REC was added in 2018. We already had that one, so that one's pretty easy. There we go. It was added in 2023. Ooh, HJH moved up. What does JARS quant emphasize? Yes, statistical methods. Which y'all know I love a lot. JARS helps in replication. Definitely. Right, we have the data. We can replicate. Which JARS category involves data coding? Good job, qual. That would be a qualitative, mixed with two, but for the most part, qual. All right, JAR's qual includes statistical analysis. Hopefully that one's a quick one. There we go. Awesome. Couple more. Ooh, double points. What is a common element of JARs? I like these new features that Kahoot's come up with. What do all of them have in common? Yay, ethical considerations, exactly. True or false? Ooh, double points for this one too. JARs improves manuscript quality. Yes, boom, fast, good. We have two more. Love the doubles here. Which JARs category includes effect size? Y'all don't know how much fun I have finding pictures to match these. Okay, there we go. Last one. J and DR and FH in the lead. True, false. JARs started in 2010. Okay, it started in 2008, but was launched in 2018. All right, so thank you for playing my games with me. And what questions or comments do you have about JARs?
I have a question. So when you showed the outline with the different categories for us to report, should that be the headings that we use when we submit the
Yes.
manuscript to a journal? And then how about all the subheadings too?
If you have more than two subheadings, yes, right? So if you only have one subheading, you would keep it under that one main heading, but once you hit
Okay.
two subheadings, yes, you should have it.
Include them all. Okay, so for that quantitative, there were quite a few subheadings
Exactly.
to break it all down, and that's okay to
Especially
include
under
all those?
procedures and methodology, for sure. You would definitely, for yours, Patty, have multiple
Okay.
subheadings.
And if they said only 30 pages, but you have to report all those assumptions, I mean, could it be longer, or do you just have to cut out words? How do you
You
do
know
that?
how in class we practice the interpretation?
Okay,
Just write that interpretation. So you don't have to explain how you did all the assumptions. You would just do that interpretation statement.
okay,
Okay.
yep, thanks.
When looking to publish a dissertation, what is the difference between ProQuest and other journal articles? So ProQuest is actually a publisher of dissertations. UC does not participate in ProQuest. So I would say focus on your journal articles. It's a really good idea to talk to your previous committee, or as the director of scholarly engagement, I work with alumni as well. And I have helped a few people, faculty and students, simplify their dissertation in order to make it fit into the journals, and also to help identify what journals they may want to think about publishing. So Vanita, if you wanted to meet, we could definitely have a meeting. I can send you my booking link and we can connect and we can brainstorm together. Okay.
Thank you.
Happy to do it. All right. Other thoughts, comments? I'm wondering about those of you that have already finished. What would have been different had you had this when you started, if anything? And faculty can jump in too if they want, other full-time.
You know, I think when you're going through your dissertation, the thing that the students want to do is we just want to get it done. And we really don't think about, well, what are we going to do with this afterwards? So now that it's afterwards and we want to get it published, now all of this makes a lot of sense. But when you're working through the dissertation, you just want to do whatever the committee wants you to do to get it done. I don't know if you really have the bandwidth to really think about what journal articles your dissertation is going to go into. For me right now, as a assistant professor, I'm tenure track, so I have to produce articles, right? So now this becomes important to me, but at the time,
You didn't understand the relevance, probably.
no, and I didn't have the bandwidth. It was just enough to work on getting that dissertation accomplished.
Any other thoughts, Ginevra?
I think it would have helped me organize things a lot earlier on. Of course, you go through the writing and rewriting process, but if I had had jars, I think I just would have organized a little bit earlier on. It may have saved myself some of the rewriting that I had to do, just knowing where things went. I think that was a lot of the questions I had, and of course, LA as my chair and Dr. Bonfini as my methodologist, you guys helped me put those into place. But I did do a lot of work of putting something one place and having to completely shift it to somewhere else. So it would have just been very helpful in that process.
Yeah, I felt like when I first started writing that I just spent so much time looking at other people's work, trying to figure out what the right way was, that to me, these standards just make it so easy. It's just like, okay, let me answer these questions. Let me fill in the blanks type of thing. Yeah.
Yes. And also language too, because that's another thing. Looking at different dissertations, reading different articles that had similar methodology, the language is vastly different. And so I had to figure out what my language was going to be versus having it already standardized for me.
Good points. For those of you that are at the beginning or in the early stages, do you see yourself utilizing this as you prepare your dissertation? What do y'all think? Jail's like, yes. Mhm. Okay. All right. Well, thank y'all for coming. I appreciate your attention. I'm happy to hang out for just a couple minutes if anybody has any follow-up questions, but I appreciate you all being here and I hope to see you at our next session with Dr. Bonfini doing qual.